Fine, as we have today some new participants, I'm sure, well, most of us, of course, know the side project, but just some basic information. What is the side project about? It is a Horizon 2020 project, and the main purpose is to get a better understanding of how energy communities and energy efficiency services are established and managed. Communication is a very crucial point, so how can we communicate with different groups and individuals to engage them into renewable energies and energy communities. And another crucial point, how can knowledge transfer work between pilots, but also between pilots and replicants, because today it's all about replication. The focus is on 3 levels of collective actions. Those existing at the start of the project, these are the pilots, and then those will be initiated or supported in their replication throughout the project, and those who are not directly involved, but through the dissemination in the course of the DECIDE project, also benefiting, of course, from what we gather, what we learn. So just a short overview, there are 7 pilots in the DECIDE project, and there are now 13 deciders. It's the replicants, in fact, and 3 of them are here today. Club E is gonna participate online through a video. Then we have Alpine Paris, thanks for coming, and we have CESCO, thanks for coming as well. It's a short overview. We have this is the project timeline. So meetings like this we have had, and we will have some in the future. It's like shared between a partner day, knowledge sharing among us, like so to say, but also the public participation is really important in this project for the knowledge transfer aspect. So DECIDE to Replicate is today. And as I said, today is all about replication. And I would like to invite Andreas for his keynote, and thank you for your attention.
Thanks, Claudia. Today we will discuss replication, upscaling, and there's so many definitional concepts. We discussed the entire afternoon yesterday, and I will present you some takeaways from our project, how we see it. But it's important that we get your feedback. How do you define replication? What are the processes? What can be replicated? These are some main questions. What is the process for communities to grow, to start, develop, replicate? Who can replicate? What can be replicated? Technologies, organizational models. How can learning and user engagement help to grow and replicate? How can enabling frameworks look like? Regulatory frameworks, but also economic conditions. Claudia mentioned already we have energy communities and collective actions. What are collective actions? Can be anything, but we defined energy communities being close to the EU definitions. So renewable energy communities or citizen energy communities, this is easy. And the main aim is community creation, generation of environmental and social value in the community. But collective actions, it's a very broad definition. Actually, energy communities can be also regarded as a subset of collective actions. But we have a couple of pilots that are collective actions, and these are profit-oriented activities carried out by an external service provider in a group of citizens, household participants. In our pilots, the aim is to increase energy efficiency, for example, by retrofitting boilers to make them flexible, to enable demand response, creating market revenues, and the consumers can benefit from them. But still, the service providers have an interest to work with communities because the community structures are needed for a rollout and acceptance of the solutions. But I want to highlight, this is how we define collective actions based on our pilots, and collective actions can be so much more, but not within DECIDE. Upscaling and replication. You find tons of definitions. Normally, upscaling is defined as growth in the same context, and replication is defined as a growth in a different regulatory, technological, economic context. This is a definition we find often in European Union documents. we decided to define upscaling as growth in the same target group, maybe by the same organization, and replication is growth within different target groups or different organizations, offering different services and business models. But the boundaries are not clear-cut. But this is just a working definition from the Decide project. You can see within the upscaling concept, there are still many variations. Communities can grow just with size increase, but they can also grow via reproduction using networks. Has upscaling and replication the same meaning for energy communities and collective actions? I think it's a bit different. For collective actions, upscaling is more important than replication. Collective actions have a generic interest to scale up and grow. They want to make more profits. The focus is on products that can emerge and to enter new markets. Important factors for upscaling of collective actions is modularity, services that can be expanded at a later stage. You have to consider them now already. Social targeting is important. If you want to upscale, if you want to reach a critical mass of consumers, you know who to reach and what is the ideal target group. Important is to offer cost advantages for consumers and also to have long-term commitments of consumers participating. For energy communities, it's a bit different. I think here both upscaling and replication are maybe equally important, but an energy community may not replicate itself. There may be a need for facilitation, for policymakers stimulating replication. So policymakers need to provide a framework and enable a learning process. Collective actions may be more uniform in their activities. Energy communities can be very different. There's some site-specific, target group specific, so there is no one-size-fits-all solution. Only some elements can be replicated. For example, we cannot replicate a Greek energy community in Austria. We have a completely different regulatory framework, but we can learn from Greek communities how they organized the governance structure. Maybe there are some good ideas in this, how to deal with the non-profit provisions and so on. So it's rather learning from communities, maybe also in other countries, and transferring specific elements. Precondition to replicate may include existing community structures. It's difficult to start from zero, but if you have already something, an existing community, not an energy community, but some kind of community structure, it's easier. You need, of course, the willingness to collaborate. It would be beneficial if the community already has some democratic structures. Also, we identified municipalities as important partners because they are the link to the people. And if we cooperate with municipalities, we can easier reach our target groups. This was my little, we still find some important steps for replication. Step 1, identify the target group. Tailor learning specified to the specific target group. Then carry out a regulatory framework analysis, understand the context, and then assess what is the minimum that you can transfer to another context. You cannot transfer everything, but there may be a minimal viable product that can be implemented based on barriers and knowledge of the target group. This was my little appetizer, but I hope we get a lot of feedback during the day. The panel sessions are structured across the questions I mentioned earlier, and I'm looking forward. Are there any immediate comments, questions? Otherwise, we can also tackle them in the sessions we have during the day.
is enough.
Then we catch up some time. Yeah,
Just a quick one. How do you frame that? How do you understand what's the goal of replication? Replication for what? So what do you see is what's driving the lead or the goal in, sort of behind what you just presented?
I mean, why do we need energy communities? Because we want to decarbonize, we want to increase renewables. And for this reason, there's an instrument, one out of many needed, because the transformation needs many different means. And energy communities is only one part of the puzzle. But if it works out, in some cases, it's beneficial to have to scale it up, to replicate it. So if we observe that it's working in some contexts, then it's worthwhile examining whether it can work somewhere else.
So within the frame of this initiative, have you set some sort of, like, do you have a goal in mind?
You mean a target, how much we want to replicate?
Yeah, in terms of how you define replicating, is there a goal that you're imagining replication towards? I mean, to how you defined it, and all the definitions you gave, but what's the sort of grand goal behind? I agree, of course, please.
The goal is for all solutions decide, created and found. If they seem to be workable, then we want to spread them out. So, see, maybe you have a take on this.
If I can just add to the main goal of this as a research project is to find some sort of, let's say, recipes or ways that we can provide people tools to replicate solutions that work. So we don't have a specific, like, we want to have 100 replicants out there at the end of the project. It's not the idea. The idea is just that we provide, let's say, we call them tools. Initially, we thought, okay, some sort of recipes could work in different countries, but it seems depending on different communities will want to work in a different way to manage their energy. So what we're trying to do now with the project is trying to find these, let's say, tools or different ways that they can use to either engage people, to organize their business model, how they can assess their business model, how they can analyze what is the regulation in the country. We try to provide overviews of that so that they can go and they can pick and choose and say, okay, I take this and this and this, and based on this I can try to organize my energy community. So it's more like, in the end, that we have some sort of a toolbox that's not as a software necessarily, just guides, tools.
Benedette.
I like your definition of replication and upscaling. And for me, it's a little bit different, and that's why I asked myself, how did you come to the definition of replication and upscaling? Because you said replication is basically spreading in different product groups, and upscaling is spreading in the same product group. For me, replication would basically be also, as you said, different elements you can basically copy or whatever, but upscaling for me would be basically roll out, for example, over a whole Austria, independent of product groups. So how did you get to these definitions? Because I find them really interesting.
I think this came out of our social world page ones on social science. Maybe Mona can add.
I think basically we do not have a different opinion on that. We discussed about this yesterday, and maybe my group was not the right wording for it. Rather, it was meant to be that if you're talking about a rollout, for example, of a product in South Austria, that would definitely be scaling up, right? Because it's just reaching more people. But rather, the different target group was more meant to be, let's say, we have an energy community working in Austria, and there's another energy community that might build up in Greece. Then you have to see that you do not copy it, but rather you have to analyze the target group that you have, and that it's a replication action, but you're not replicating the whole process, but you're rather looking at the target group that you find in places you want to have a replication on, and then analyze this target group and look which tools or actions or guides work in their context, and how can I translate that to my context. Maybe that's, yeah, thank you.
Any other comments? If not, then I think.
Then I thank you for your keynote. And I would very much like to get to our first point, the introduction of the CISC project. And I would invite Johannes
Yes.
to get to the front and to introduce the ECRU project.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here today and great that we have this event today. Thank you. ECRU is the project that I'm actually presenting here, and having only 3 minutes time, it's a bit hard to actually introduce the whole business model. However, I'll give you just the gist of it. Those I think are the round.
More.
Yes, absolutely. There's more to come. So I think we got it. There you go, ECRU, here we go again. Just another business model to aim for, so to speak. And all right. And ECRU is in a sense a third business model, an opportunity, an additional opportunity to the already existing renewable or citizens energy communities. So it's a third opportunity for energy communities to take on an additional business model, which means that here we have actually a interface, and we take this interface as a digital, with a digital platform, which means that we created a digital platform where we create virtual communities, energy communities. We can connect consumers and prosumers with the energy utility who manages, in a sense, the energy communities, which means virtually, so on a digital platform, we connect the energy flows. We can visualize the energy flows from one household, from the consumers, from the prosumers, and also from the energy utility itself. This is more or less our business model, which means that a vital aspect is the digital platform provided, and it gives us the opportunity to also add some gamification, some split incentives, for example, for consumers, for prosumers, and also for the energy utility to stay connected to the consumers, to their consumers, and also to the prosumers. Which means we should actually in the end have a win-win-win situation.
3 wins.
3 wins, absolutely. Energy utility should win, the consumer should win, and the prosumer should win. Absolutely.
And the client.
We have a few pilot sites, in this case only 3. One of our pilot sites from Germany, he's here today and will present in the afternoon. And any interest, if you have, in this new business model, in this platform, in this digital connection, then please just let me know. I have flyers in the very back on the table, and you can ask me throughout, of course, throughout this day today, and I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Johannes. And then next would be Michael Niederkumbler to present to us Renergetics. Just 1 moment, the slides.
I take the moment to say good morning again to all of you and introduce myself a little bit. I'm Michael Niederkumbler from Energiekompass GmbH. I'm working in the Horizon 2020 project Renergetic together with Selina, Mona and Florian, and they invited me to use this opportunity to tell you a little bit about the Renergetic project. So now the slides are up, we dive into it. So, what is Renergetic in a nutshell? Renergetic is a project about creating urban energy islands. With this we mean geographically delineated areas with a high level of self-sufficiency and that they are based on local renewables. We want to include all available energy vectors, not only electricity, but also heat is very important in the project. And the goal is to replicate our results throughout Europe and the whole world. And I'm responsible for replication in the project. I'm the leader of the replication work package. We do a couple of things in the project. You can see here heat demand response, EV demand response. I don't want to go into too much detail right now. Just let me switch.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes. So we also have 3 pilot sites in the project. One in Italy, in close to Milan, the Ospedale San Raffaele. The second one is the university campus in Poznan in Poland. And the third one is the new docks area in Ghent in Belgium. And these sites are very heterogeneous. They have different infrastructure, they have different setup, they have different needs. And for this reason, we wanted to develop solutions for these sites and said if we start making tailor-made solutions for one of these sites, it will just work there. It will not be possible to replicate. And for this reason, we said we have to keep replication at the forefront of our thinking. And even with the pilot sites, we have to approach them as they would already replicate our solution, because only with this approach we feel we will have a replicable solution in the end that can be used somewhere else. So what do we mean, and I think this is maybe the important slide now, what do we mean with replication? We did not distinct between replication and upscaling, rather we made a distinction between replication and reproduction. So we said reproduction means that someone else is doing our stuff with our tools, with our methods, and achieves the same result as we do. And replication, in our definition, means that someone else is doing our methods, but with their own tool, with their own approach, and achieve the same results as we did. So maybe to go a little bit more in detail, we follow the SGAM, the Smart Grid Architecture Model, to design our solutions. And it's very roughly here. We have at the bottom the technical infrastructure context. Then we have the 2 layers for communication and information layer, and come to that later. Then we have the function layer, and this is where we develop our solution. And this part we want to reproduce. We want others to take our software, that it's a package, it's a product, if you will, to take it and use it and be able to achieve the same results. So reproduce our modules, but replicate the whole thing, because the technical infrastructure, as I said in the pilots, is very different, and we have no way to interfere with someone else's infrastructure. That's not reproducible, but it is a context that needs to be there in order for this module to make sense, because they are developed with a certain context in mind, and this needs to be there. Otherwise, it cannot be reproduced, and the whole thing cannot be replicated. And in order to connect our solution with the technical infrastructure of the pilot or any replication site, we provide a northbound interface, an API if you want, that connects to our solution. And the pilot site or replication site, they have to prepare a southbound interface where they connect to our solution. And of course, the whole has a technical context, but it also has a social context. It has a legal and economic context that needs to be there to give a frame so that the solution that we develop can make sense. And this is our approach to replication, our distinction between reproduction or reproducibility and replicability. And I hope it made sense to you as well. And I'm open for questions. Thank you.
I have a question. I think this was a very interesting presentation. because you have reproduction, replication, and I was wondering whether reproduction is a form of upscaling. You scale up your technical solutions. Where's the clear difference between reproduction and upscaling?
I don't know, because we never discussed the term upscaling in our project context, but I think it's quite similar, because it's taking the meaning. What we have is to take the same thing and use it as is without any modification somewhere else. Okay. In this sense, it's upscaling of the product, of the energetic product, but the whole package needs to be replicated, because it cannot be taken one-to-one. It needs
this also how difficult the topic is, because there's no official definition, and different projects have different nuances how to define it. And
yes. Also, when we started, we did not find a lot in the literature about replication, about methodology, about definitions. So one of the goals of our energetic project is to provide a white paper on replication. We will put down our own imagination, our own definitions, and share with everybody to have a starting point.
Thank you. Any more questions at this stage? Johannes or Michael? Maybe one? Because otherwise, we... Yes?
Maybe just a statement from my side. As a ICRO, for the ICRO project, we are looking currently for replication, so for follow-up communities, and that is something that I haven't mentioned. Thanks.
Thank you.